we understand as food allergy people that like we've got to check everything, even the freaking seasoning can.
Yep.
But like people that don't live and breathe allergies every day, like they're not thinking that.
And there's cashew cheese right next to the mozzarella cheese, and no bueno for me. So I just don't eat at that pizza place.
It's food, get over it. But like to me, it's not just food. And so it was a big blow, major blow for us when we basically stopped eating out altogether. And not just as a family, like really at all.
Hi.
Hello.
And welcome to EpiPod. Sarah is a mom to 2 little boys with food allergies.
And Danielle has navigated life-threatening allergies her entire life.
Living with an invisible health condition is so isolating.
The fear and the anxiety.
Trying to cover it up so you don't affect anybody else.
Especially your kids. Sound familiar?
Join us on the couch and take a load off with people who just get it.
We're so glad you're here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing so great. How are you?
I feel discombobulated today, but also what else is new?
Mom of littles things.
Yes. I mean, it's just, life always feels like a lot.
I have a hilarious story for you.
Hit me.
Okay. So yesterday I went to Whole Foods and I saw this very cute guy. And there was like a clone of him. I was like, are you guys brothers, twins? I don't know. And they would like talk and they were like weaving in and out of the aisles. And I was like, okay, clearly they know each other. They had like tattoo, facial hair, tattoo. I was like, ooh, okay. And spicy pirate, but like very smiley. I was smiley. I was like, ooh, hello again in the produce aisle. Then I go to self-checkout and one of the spicy pirates goes next to me at self-checkout. And then the second spicy pirate comes. And the first spicy pirate, I'm not sure where that's come from. Well, I noticed he was putting almond butter in his cart. And I was like, at this point, I've decided in my head we're getting married because almond butter is my safe tree nut.
That's right.
And he wasn't putting peanut butter in there. So I was like, obviously, it's as if he's proposed. And so then he like mumbles under his breath. He was like, oh, like, I feel like I've forgotten something. And I don't know. I'm trying to meet guys more in the wild. I'm just like anti-dating app right now.
Yep.
They are rotten. So I'm trying to be more friendly in the wild. And so I blurted out, you definitely forgot something. And he was like, oh, like, what did I forget? It would be so helpful if you could tell me. It would save me so much time.
Do I know where this is going?
Well, unfortunately, this is the part where I was like I got shy.
Oh, dang it.
And I was like, oh, I don't know. Are you guys roommates? Again, I blurted out. I'm like, they're going to think that I'm not well. I wasn't well, to be clear. Not just one guy that's my type, but 2 guys. And they were like, yeah, actually we are. And then one guy looked like he was about to say something, and my thanks for coming to Whole Foods ticket popped out, and I bolted as if I was on fire. I get into my car, put my groceries in, and I was like, duh! I should have said, when he was like, what did I forget? I should have said my number.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
I know.
Oh.
I know. Well, I really hope that he's enjoying his almond butter today.
Well, and I also really hope that for some reason he's listening and he's like, I was the sexy pirate. What did
we
you
don't
say?
use the word sexy.
I know, I forgot.
Spicy,
you told
spicy.
me that. Spicy pirate. Okay. Spicy to me just feels like I don't know. Sometimes when I'm like in a heated argument or like something's going on, I'm like, oh, they got spicy. So spicy to me sometimes is like a negative connotation.
Oh.
So, but I hear you here. It means like a hot pirate.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what you're right with spicy. Whenever I'm like meeting another dog on a walk when I'm walking my dog and they're like, oh, can we say hi? I always go, oh, he's spicy.
Yeah. See? So that's why I got confused in this story. But
anyways.
Well, that is a fun dating chronicle. And I love that. That would have fit perfectly in last week's episode. That's okay.
That's okay.
It's okay. We're just like living our lives.
I'm going to go back same time next week and do my grocery run at that Whole Foods, not the Whole Foods that I normally go to.
Okay.
And I'll report back.
And if he puts peanut butter in his cart this time instead of almond butter.
Divorce.
Okay, deal. Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay.
How are you?
I am okay. I feel like I'm traveling tomorrow for work.
Where are you going?
Going to Colorado. I feel like I'm traveling a lot more for work, which is tricky. I mean, I did get like a different sort of job role, yes. And so it is requiring me to travel a bit more. And by a bit more, I mean like at all, pretty much. So like I'm probably going once a month or so somewhere for a couple of nights. But I will say, like, it's not easy to travel anyway when you are a mom with little kids, but then, like, to add the food allergy treatment element onto it.
That's a lot for one person to do.
Totally. I mean, it's a lot for me to do as a mom when Mark happens to go for a couple of days, and it's certainly a lot for Mark too. I mean, he works full time. It's the whole thing. So I don't know. It is one of those tricky scenarios where I'm like, how do we just get in a better rhythm and like handle it? Am I going to have to say no to some trips? I don't know. Like, I just feel kind of, I don't know. I feel guilt. But then also it's kind of fun to travel. So I'm like, well,
you get to eat whatever restaurant you want.
Yes. But also, like, that's fun for me, but like Mark's at home.
Right.
Yeah.
But and the last, like the little incident, not so little incident that Graham had when you updosed to one whole peanut with treatment was when you were solo dosing.
Right.
So,
and it makes it a lot trickier to handle everything. I mean, I had to call someone over to be with us in case something else happened and Ethan was alone, like
it's a lot.
Yes. So yeah, but definitely excited about eating out on the go and trying new restaurants.
Not wiping down the airplane.
Yes. Although sometimes now I'm like, it's a habit. I kind of want to just for germs.
Yeah. Airplanes are gross. Yeah. People are gross.
Super gross.
Well, whatever route you go, whether it's having to say no to some work opportunities or better rhythm or more systems in place, whatever ends up happening, I just hope that you, above all, have a lot of grace for yourself, because truly, like, what you do in a 2-hour span in the morning is like sometimes what I do in half a week. So I'm like, oh my God, like you need like a whole, I don't even know, like semi-truck of grace for yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I am trying to get better about giving myself grace, but it's hard. It's hard to do as a mom because you just don't even have time for the grace part. You know, you're like just on to the next thing. But that's okay. I mean, life will hopefully slow down at some point. And for now, I'm just going to keep getting better at managing and then take breaks like when I can. But we talked about eating out. Speaking of getting to eat out while I'm alone, this whole episode, we're going to be talking about
eating out
with allergies, which is no easy feat.
No, it's a big thing. It's probably one of my biggest roadblocks right now.
Well, and you used to do it a lot more often, and now not so much anymore.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about sort of like where we're at and where we used to be at?
Yeah.
Because we've sort of traded places.
We have. Yeah. We've done a flip-flop for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so when you were, I mean, I guess we could go all the way back, but when you were definitely like on your own, starting out like in college and beyond in California, you did go out to dinner.
Totally. My whole life I have always eaten out, no problemos. I mean, here and there were little things, but anxiety or worrying about cross-contamination, it wasn't on my radar because I didn't know it needed to be. I have always been severely allergic to peanut and tree nut. It just wasn't a part of my life. Which I'm like, thank goodness nothing truly terrible happened. And I had accidents here and there. But I think back to like the 90s and the early 2000s, you didn't have to manage things as much. Like cheese was cheese. I wasn't worried, which I wasn't managing dairy. Well, I was until 3rd grade, but cheese was cheese. You could have it or you couldn't. Now, when I go to a pizza place, it's like, oh, they have a vegan option for pizzas, and it's all shredded cheese, and they keep it all in the same area, like a salad bar style where the cooks can grab, and there's cashew cheese right next to the mozzarella cheese, and no bueno for me. So I just don't eat at that pizza place.
Which could be good for people with dairy allergies.
Totally.
But then it complicates things for someone like you who just deals with nut allergies.
Yeah. Or, I mean, it could be bad for both of us because it's cross-contamination on both ends.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like the food industry has changed. Some of it's like health trends and some of it is trying to give people more options, but for better or worse, wherever you're standing, it has changed.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, peanut oil. I remember one time, we were spending the summer in Colorado. We always did when I was growing up. It was like July in Colorado. It's just so dang hot in Texas.
Yes.
And I remember ordering like fries and a grilled chicken breast or something like I always did, always being a picky eater. And we were at this nice restaurant, and I mean, I couldn't have been more than 10 years old, but my spidey senses went off. I probably smelled something in the air, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they fry in peanut oil. And they put the food down, and I was like, I wonder if they put it in peanut oil. And my dad was like, well, like, you should ask before you eat that if you feel that way. And I was like, okay. And so I like jumped up and went to go talk to the waiter, and they were like, yes, actually it does. And it was hilarious. It was this like fries in a cone. It was like a fancy restaurant, and they served these like fries in this big like cornucopia, and it was like in this wire spiral thing that they sat in. It was so cool. And like, thank goodness I wasn't just delighted by this fun presentation, like popped one in. But other than little instances where it was like a lot of like near misses, and I just taught myself to ask, it was not really on my radar. And then, I moved to Los Angeles for college and like ate at the dining halls. I remember like avoiding certain areas at the cafeteria because that's where like the messy peanut butter jar was. So I wouldn't like make toast there. But again, like didn't have the fear element, didn't really understand the consequences that I was managing, that I would be managing. And in Los Angeles, everybody has something, and they're on a different level, especially. So I went to college from 2010 to 2014. And now I feel like a lot of restaurants are getting more allergy aware. But back then, it was like this special thing in LA where you would sit down and they would have like gluten free. It was just, every restaurant was like very well versed in it, very well prepared. And you're dealing with celebs and health nuts. It's like the A-list and health capital of the world. So, or at least in my head it was. And so I just had a really easy time navigating that.
You felt like people took it seriously.
They took it seriously. They were almost educating me. Like I would say I have a nut allergy, and they'd be like, "Oh, great. Like you can't have the fries because we fry in peanut oil, but it's in this area of the kitchen and it won't splatter over here on the grill. So here are some options for the grill." Yeah.
They were aware, like hyper aware of allergies and what needed to happen, like the dream, really.
Yes. So I feel like 18, 19, 20 is where, I was on my own for the first time, and I had access to these sorts of allergy policies in restaurants that were all about options for people. So that was really cool. And I learned a lot through that. And then I moved, it was still Los Angeles, but a little bit further south of the airport. It's called the Bubble, also known as the South Bay. And it was just like living in a postcard. I lived in between Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach, like literally translates to beautiful. Like my life was beautiful. And I worked for a local lifestyle magazine, and I worked in the events and marketing department. So I got to know, and they became friends of mine, the owners of these small businesses, these restaurants, the managers of the restaurants, the bar backs, like not only people I worked with, but like the people that I was hanging out with and doing Friendsgiving with. Or if I had a flat tire, they were like, my mom and dad of Manhattan Beach was like the owner of this restaurant and this wine bar. And so I lived there for, I think I was at that company for a little over 6 years. So I got really, really accustomed to walking into a restaurant and then being like, hey, Danielle, like, do you want your usual? Because again, I still eat pretty limited of like, I don't eat red meat, not because of allergies, I just don't. But so they knew like, a few of here are the things that I typically order. Or like there was this little grocer on the corner of my block. It was like Ocean Grocer, like 2 more steps from my apartment. And I lived with many roommates because 20s things. But the grocer would call me every day at 5:45 because he knew that's when I would be driving home from work. And he would tell me what fish they had and what sides they had. And like, do you want me to make your dinner? He made my dinner like more nights than not.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And he would always say like, don't worry, no nuts. Like, even though they didn't have nuts in the building, he would always like double insure it. So that was my life. It was pretty easy to manage. Also living with roommates. If I was getting takeout or I was out to dinner with them, like I just felt very safe that if I came home and had an issue, I wasn't alone. Yeah. Cut to pandemic shut down Los Angeles. I poofed to Austin thinking it was going to be a couple of months living with my cousin. And it turned into, now I've been here for 3.5 years. Yeah. It was my first time living all by myself. And so just feeling like, oh my gosh, if it hits the fan, family friendly, if it hits the fan, I don't have anybody here to help me. And starting to think about things like, how close is my apartment to a hospital or an urgent care? Right. Or like, do I have good cell service in my apartment building, or really gravitating towards apartment buildings where I had friends who already lived in the building? Like those thoughts started coming into my head. And because of the pandemic, and it was just I was biting off too much than I could handle. Like we talked about it earlier, but just ordering digitally was not for me. Doing takeout was not for me. Ordering from somebody with a mask was not for me. Also, Austin, well, I know you told me like lots of nice restaurants where they're very allergy conscious. I always just think of it as like food truck and fusion central. Like they're putting weird like Chinese fusion with like barbecue. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Or like small preparation spaces with the food truck culture here. And so I just up and completely stopped eating out, because at first when we were in like true lockdowns and I was in my hometown, I wasn't going to be doing digital ordering, just wasn't. And also we weren't even sure if that's how the virus was like passing to people.
Yeah.
So my family chose to not, because of Corona. We were being very, 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 very careful with my dad and his health. And then it just continued on. When I moved to Austin, I just didn't feel comfortable eating out. And it's a huge struggle for me now. Like when I go out, I always think of that. I don't know if it's a meme or what, but like in this economy, like I don't want to pay for anxiety. Like I would rather cook something delicious that I can really enjoy cooking and eating at home. Or honestly, I think of food truly as just fuel. Like I'm not a foodie. I've never really liked food, as funny as that is to say out loud. But like I even when I was a little kid, like I just wanted to eat and go. Like I wanted to get to the main event, whether it was the adventure or the show or the whatever, hanging out with my cousins. Whereas some people just like really love food. Yes. And the fusion, and they love trying new things and like blindfolded dinner parties, or like these fun, like, you don't know what you're eating games, you know. Like I had a friend who did a birthday party like that, and I was like, huh?
Yeah. I did a event where you all were in the dark. Like it was completely pitch black. You couldn't see anything, like not a drop of light.
My nightmare.
And so they would put the food down in front of you and you would just eat it, unknowing of what it was, no details. So I mean, I would allergy nightmare. But I was obviously not with my children, so I could do that.
But for you, that's like so delightful.
Sure. I mean, well, it was interesting, but yes, food in general is like a hobby for me. Yeah. I mean, it always has been. I've always been like really interested in trying new foods, and like food to me is not fuel. Like it is enjoyment. It is entertainment. It is like life in a lot of ways.
Something you want to, you're excited to pay for that experience.
Totally.
Whereas I'm just like, why am I paying for this?
Yeah. 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 So for us, whenever we like got, smacked in the face with the tidal wave of allergies for our kids, like it felt crushing, totally crushing, because growing my child while I was growing Graham, being pregnant with Graham, I had all of these visions. I mean, I said out loud to my friends, I can't wait for my kid to be like the foodie kid. What? Because we would go to like ramen, like a fancy ramen place, right? Mark and I would look over and I would see this little 2 or 3 year old slurping down like the ramen noodles and, eating on the egg, like the boiled egg that they put in there and they marinate for days. And I was just like, wow, typically you see kids eating chicken nuggets and French fries, and like, not my kid. My kid's going to be the kid we can bring anywhere. And he's going to want all of the unique, like different cuisines, because that's what we like. So we're just going to like have that be our kid. That was something I dreamed of. And so when I tell you, like, I have still to this day, like grief over the fact that dream was crushed, it's truth. I mean, I know it sounds silly to so many people, probably even possibly to you, because you're like, it's food, get over it. But like, to me, it's not just food. And so it was a big blow, major blow for us when we basically stopped eating out altogether. And not just as a family, like really at all.
Wow.
Because he was contact reactive for a very long time when he was little. And so I wasn't taking any kind of chances with my little baby, you know?
Wow. That's like a night and day, like before and after, like complete lifestyle change.
Yes.
For something that was like your, if not the biggest, one of your biggest hobbies.
Yes. I mean, it was. So when we went to Italy, if you've watched Chef's Table, it's been on for many seasons, but when it first came out, it was like a really big show on Netflix, and they just chronicle like these really fancy, Michelin star restaurants around the world. And the very first episode, like season 1, episode 1 is Massimo Bottura. I think I'm saying his name right. At Osteria Francescana in Modena, Italy.
You are speaking a different language right now.
So like when people go to Italy, they tend to just go to like the big, like the Rome, the Florence, and like for us, when we went to Italy, it was crucial that we were going to go to like the gastronomic area, like the food area of Italy. So that's like, there's these 3 little towns, Modena, Bologna, and, what's the other one? Parma. So these are things where like Parmigiano Reggiano like started in Parma, Italy, so like we spent days in these small little Italian towns that people don't tend to go to, or at least didn't many, many years ago. And one of the big reasons we wanted to go was because Osteria Francescana, the number 1 restaurant in the world, like literally rated number 1 restaurant in the world for many years. We got on a wait list. I woke up at 3 a.m. and like got on a wait list 3 months before. Gosh. I mean, it was a whole thing. We spent like an obscene amount of money for like a 4-hour.
We will sit in the back of the plane so that we can go to the Parma Reggiano Matamora.
Yes. And so like all of that to say, like it was our passion, our life. Like it was like, go out to dinner and
like a pillar of your relationship, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was something like we love to do together. So whenever that was essentially taken away from us, it felt like a gut punch for sure. As silly as it may sound to some people, it was a big deal to us. So we've had to like slowly but surely like climb the mountain again and figure out, we still obviously with the boys can't do very much when it comes to going out to eat, but we have started doing a lot more. And it has huge steps. And it mainly, has to do with treatment, of course. Like he has been able to clear some of these things, or at least cross contact for some of his allergens. But it also comes with just like time and figuring out exactly how to do it safely, like how to take a calculated risk at a place that you're like, okay, I've done this, I've checked this box, I think we can handle this. Like there's something he can eat. The wait staff seems, like they know what they're doing. Like all these little boxes have to be checked. And then, let's take this calculated risk. And like slowly but surely we're adding places to our list. But I think had somebody like told me like, here are the things to do, maybe I could have gotten there sooner.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be something kind of fun to share, at least from my perspective. Do you have that as well? Like, do you have things that are like a big red flag? No.
Yes, I do definitely have my big red flag no-nos. I have, what I do to feel safe, and that I always had done, especially, moving to LA, college and post-grad. But my big before and after event with allergies was because of an accident at a restaurant. And that's where I think it didn't kick in until a few years later. Yeah. Which, I think I have like restaurant PTSD truly.
Yeah.
But that's where it all started with me, and discovering like you need to carry an EpiPen, Also going back to traveling abroad and foodies, my parents are, I wouldn't say foodies. My mom is an excellent cook, and my dad is very picky and loves excellent food. He doesn't love eating out in America, but we used to be big travelers. And I say we because, from a time that I was like really little, like toddler on, or even before toddler, I didn't even know I was like walking by myself. I was going on these international vacations with my parents. My dad had me in my parents are 20 years apart. So he was in his 50s and my mom was in her 30s. And so obviously his budget was different than if it was a dad in his 20s or 30s. So yeah, we went to Africa, to France, to Amsterdam, to safari in Africa, like all over the place. And he would love eating out there for like the Michelin star experience, or just, I don't know, the ingredients and the quality of food. And I, with my allergies, both before the restaurant accident and after, did eat out internationally. And I think it does go to say, and this is like going straight into one of my green flags, is the nicer the restaurant, the less of the risk, at least for me. Like when you are in a really nice restaurant, and I think growing up with my parents, especially while on vacation, with my dad's, you know, life stage, and also his being so picky, we would go to these restaurants where the staff takes care of you like amazingly. Like you say one thing and they take it extremely seriously, whether it's a life-threatening food allergy or, you know, I don't want anything red because it will stain my outfit or whatever. They're the type of people who are like, oh, here's a black napkin because we don't want white lint to get on your black dress. Like that kind of place. So I think eating out, I have a hard time. I'm not a hole in the wall kind of person.
Yeah. And I love them.
Yeah. I'm just like, like what's going on? So yeah, I guess we could jump straight into like green flags and no-nos.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I would agree though that like in my experience eating out, you know, Mark and I have this thing where we've been like going on a date night a month and like really sticking to it. And I do find that when we go to these Austin restaurants that are not fancy per se, like not like the white black tablecloth thing, but like, you know, you're paying a good bit of money for like something kind of fun and special. Not a food truck, not Applebee's, you know, it's like something better than that. And no offense, Applebee's. No offense, food trucks. And I love food trucks. It's just, you know, for our date night, we do something else. But they always, I mean, I would say 9.5 out of 10 times, and I don't know where the half comes from, but there's just, I'm saying the overwhelming majority of places, before I can even utter a word, like before I even give them my drink order, they ask like, are there any allergies we need to be concerned about? Every single time.
I feel like we need to go to dinner or something.
Yes. And I think these places can handle it in these kitchens too, because it's not like the menu is 14 pages long. Like again, at some of these chain restaurants, you're like, oh my gosh, I could sit here for an hour and still be reading this menu. Whereas like these menus are limited because they're like really hyper focused on good quality ingredients and recipes and food. And so they don't just have this like bustling kitchen with like a gazillion ingredients. It's really focused. And so I think at a place like that, you're going to have better luck. The flip side, or like the thing about that though, is like that's great if you're an adult and you're going to these fancy restaurants. I'm not bringing my 3 and 5 year old to these fancy restaurants. So that's kind of like a kicker for me and my family, is like, great, but I'm not buying them a $18, $20 entree that they're probably not going to eat because they're just kids and they're picky. So instead we're going to these like kid-friendly places where the kids' menus are grilled cheese and pizza and cheeseburgers and all, you know. So it's just like it makes it a little more challenging. On that in that way.
I feel like So I guess the first thing currently, before it didn't matter, I would eat out anywhere. It didn't matter. My half sister, who I'm very close to, pointed out, she is so kind and has been listening to the podcast, even though has no food allergies herself or her kids. And she was like, you didn't have these, like when we would travel with us, like I don't ever remember having like advocating or worrying or whatever. And I was like, I didn't feel that way before. But I think living in LA, I learned the nicer the place, the more attention to detail the kitchen is going to be. And it doesn't need to be like the black napkin kind of place, just some place where even like they just take a lot of pride. Like you can tell that this is owned by somebody who this is their baby and they take a lot of pride. And so of course they want to keep me safe versus like move them on, get them out kind of thing. So I guess that's a first green flag. I have never been one to call ahead, but the few times I have eaten out in Austin, I've called ahead, and they have what's that Italian food truck on the east side that's like has a lot of lore around it? Patrici's.
Yes.
When I first got to town, before I was just living with my cousin in her spare room, one of my childhood best friends was having a birthday party there. And I called ahead because I was like, food truck, I just need to see if I can even sit at the table or if it's going to be like covered in peanut oil or whatever.
Right.
And they were like, what's your name? We will be expecting you. There is only one thing that I'm concerned about on the menu. And like, I want to greet you when you get here. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And I was able to eat. And I took home leftovers and ate them the next day too. And I was like, So I'm super curious to hear your calling ahead thing, because I think that could really help me get over this roadblock.
Yeah.
But I very seldomly call ahead. It's someplace on the nicer side. And just I have a really hard time trusting, like, if a waiter is rushed, if a waiter does not seem to if English was not their first language, and I am not 100% certain they're understanding me and understanding what I'm talking about, the severity or cross-contamination, or just like words that I'm using that are not normal restaurant, that they're having conversations, especially if it's like, I don't go to any sort of like Indian, Chinese, anything Asian, or like I'm just like not going to go to a Thai food restaurant. That's not going to be safe for me. So like those are immediately off the list. If I, for whatever reason, maybe it's just because it's too loud. Maybe English is their first language, but I'm just not sure that they're able to understand me.
Yeah.
I will ask to speak directly to a manager.
We have some construction going on in the...
Allegedly.
Yes. We don't know.
We don't know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Wait, let me stop there because I feel like, I don't know if you follow the Asian Allergy Mom on Instagram.
No.
But I'll send you her handle. Ina is her name. She is lovely. And one of her big things beyond just being like a food allergy mom is that she is trying to like help people understand that, like, yes, while there are some like Asian cuisines that specifically do use a lot of peanuts, like Asian as a whole actually does not. So there are some like categories, I think she is Korean, that like almost none of their classic recipes have peanuts. And but people automatically assume like Asian is like Chinese for nuts. Right. And so I just think that like if you guys have concerns about like Asian restaurants, that would be a great person to follow to get some like really better understanding.
I love that.
About like Asian cuisine and allergies, because I'm not well versed on that. I also I was told by my allergist, stay away from Asian places, literally Asian, but like Asian is so broad.
Totally. It's a whole like area of the world.
I mean, it's like, there's
it's like saying North America.
Right. And so, anyway, I just wanted to drop that in because I think she's an amazing resource and like really awesome about like inclusivity with, of different groups.
I'm so glad that you pointed that out. One of my best friends from college, we actually were going to be freshman year roommates, and then there was like a snafu in the system and we ended up accidentally rooming with other people, but we became very close. And she also has a peanut allergy. I think she's okay with tree nuts, but she is... I think at her wedding, she had a lot of Korean food.
Okay.
Like the soup dumplings. I could be misspeaking, but I thought it was Korean, and I was like, how funny. Like maybe it's like made without peanuts. And she explained to me later on, like, a lot of Korean food actually doesn't have nuts at all. That's just why it's safe for me and why it's one of my favorite foods. Like that's why I had soup dumplings as like the welcome cocktail hour.
It's just not well known. And like I said, like even allergists are just like blanket stating like avoid this entire cuisine. And it's actually, like, well,
when we did not even know each other, the first time we were going to meet up and go to lunch, I remember you were like sending me a few options and you're like, what places do you feel comfortable? And I was like, oh no, I hate food. I hate eating out. Like I just want to be able to connect with the person, not for like 60% of my brain to be working behind the scenes, trying to figure out if I'm safe, body scanning, talking to manager. It's exhausting.
Yes.
But it was Korean.
Really?
And I was like, I don't know about that. But you were like, we've eaten there before. The boys are safe always. But let's not do Korean if you're not comfortable with that. Okay. I can't wait to follow her.
Yes. Sorry.
So speaking,
off track.
If for whatever reason, I feel like the waiter cannot understand me. I want to speak to a manager. And at this point, like I have so much restaurant food allergy anxiety specifically, I pretty much always ask to speak to the manager anyways.
Yeah.
I just don't eat out a lot. I don't. And it's something that I'm trying to work towards slowly. But we talked about this before with being an OIT. I think the metaphor I used last time was an orange juice. Like you get a jug of orange juice every morning of like BS meter. And I've used more orange juice than I was given in the morning on dosing. Yeah. I don't have any more bravery. I don't have any more BS to give. Mm-hmm. So that's why eating out, I feel like also is hard for me, but I love wine. I almost said I love alcohol. I love wine. So I go out to wine bars probably 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And like the friends that I go with will often order appetizers or share a couple of like tapas situations. I just choose not to. But I mean, with cross-contamination, there's plenty of stuff going on behind the scenes. So I'm giving the spiel very comfortably at wine bars. And we talked about that a little bit in episode 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, so speaking straight to the manager. And then I guess the way that I gauge, like, can I trust this person or not? A lot of it is just the spidey senses and my perceptiveness.
The gut feeling.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like I'm also asking like super open-ended questions. Like I'll tell them I have a life-threatening allergy to peanuts and tree nuts. What sort of oil, or sometimes I'll ask first what sort of, if I'm ordering just like fries with my drinks. Yeah. What sort of oil do you cook in? I'm not really sure. Can you go ask? Like I have and
also the fact that they don't know. And I'm not saying that every restaurant person, I mean, like industry people have a really tough job.
Oh my gosh,
and
they have the toughest job in the world.
Yes. And so we have to understand as like allergy people that like they have a lot going on and like they might not have been trained or like well equipped. So it's nothing on them, but it is a decision we have to make as allergy parents or, you know, as a person with allergies that like, okay, that's fine. Like I'm not giving you any shit, but like now I'm making a educated decision based on like the vibe I'm getting and the information that you know when you come to my table. And that's kind of like, speaking of open-ended questions, that's kind of what I do. Before we go anywhere, I pick up the phone or my husband picks up the phone and we call the restaurant. And one of the first things I say is very open-ended. I say something to the effect of, what sort of food allergy protocols do you have?
Super broad.
Super broad. And if they like sort of like stumble
like,
in that moment.
What's a food allergy protocol?
If they're like, well, I mean, what do you mean? And I'm like, okay, red flag number 1, right? Like if I'm going to bring my kids there, I need to know that you have some idea of what a food allergy protocol is, or do you have them at all? Like maybe there are none at this place. And then like, I'm already uncomfortable.
Probably not going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if they are truly just like kind of taken aback, or maybe it's like a host that doesn't know, you know, I'll say, and oftentimes I will ask to speak with the manager first. I should have said that, but like somebody who will know for the most part what they're talking about or should. And generally they'll say things like, well, we make sure to change our gloves, or we have a separate area in the kitchen that we handle food allergy things, or we'll let the chef know and come to the table. They'll talk to you about it. We have flags that we stick in our food. I mean, there's a whole array and range that I find. But just having something to say at all really to that open-ended question is a green flag for me.
Right.
Because like we can talk, like I'm not saying like this answer is like make or break, but like,
do you know what a food allergy is?
Right. Like you have to have some amount of understanding and like knowing what a food allergy is. You have to do something separate. You know, you have to at least understand that like the foods can't really touch each other, or like this next question sometimes for me is, okay, my son has a dairy allergy and a peanut allergy and a tree nut allergy. What options might they have on the menu? And if they can like think through, well, they could probably do the grilled chicken. Our fries are, you know, fried in this sort of oil, or the marinade, doesn't have milk in it. Like if they're already saying things like that, if they're knowledgeable about the menu items and the ingredients, I'm feeling really good. Like it's making me feel better. But I should get back even further to say that like before I even call, I'm checking the menu online. So that's actually step number one. Step number one for me is Google the restaurant, look up the menu. And if it is somewhere that again is dropping peanuts on the floor or like there's just like peanuts and a bunch of things, or if it's a pizza restaurant, right? Like that's not anywhere we're going to go. There aren't many options. There's a lot of risk there. Like that's just a no. But if we call a place and they do have chicken tenders, like I have been some places where they, believe it or not, and it regularly does have milk in like the batter of chicken tenders.
I can imagine.
But like I've actually stumbled across a few that don't, and they will be able to like look up the ingredients and tell me, oh, actually, yeah, there's no milk or egg in this batter. Like it was some sort of maybe water wash or, some other type of batter. And I'm like, great, he can have a fried nugget at this place. Like what?
We love a fried nugget.
Yes. But French fries, again, shared fryers weren't always an okay thing for us. They are now. So now like French fries are a big win for us. We can do those at a lot of places. So if nothing else, I'll like pack him a main and then give him some French fries at the restaurant. But yeah, I mean, I look at the menu, I see if it's even something that I'm willing to like call about and take a chance on to even literally waste the time to pick up the phone. Then I call, I ask an open-ended question like, what sort of food allergy protocols do you have? Based on their response, I kind of begin my gut feeling. And then I continue to ask questions from there. I would say something like, if they say, yes, there are a few menu items I think we could manage. We make sure that it's cooked in a separate clean pan. We change our gloves. The chef will come over and bring it to you. I'm feeling really good. I continue to ask any kind of follow-up questions about menu items. And then if we decide to go and take that calculated risk, I make sure that when I get there, before we even really like sit down and do anything, I ask again.
Right.
Because I don't
know if it's the same person.
Right. And I don't want to sit my family down and get everybody settled and then the waiter come over and be like, I don't know, or I don't think so, or, just feeling and looking uncomfortable. Okay. Well, now this is a horrible experience.
And looking uncomfortable.
Yeah. And also like my kids are 3 and 5, like restaurants aren't easy anyway.
Yeah.
So like if we're going to like get everybody in the car, pack up all the stuff, get to the restaurant, find a table, get them settled with crayons, like I don't want to do all of that and then feel uncomfortable and have to get up and leave.
Yeah.
So I try to talk to them like right when we get there. And then I talk to the waiter. If I feel really confident in the waiter, then I don't necessarily ask always to speak to the chef.
Same.
But generally I will say like, hey, is it okay if, I kind of chat with the chef a bit to ask him some specific questions. Even specific questions that I ask with a dairy allergy are things like, and just so just to make sure you understand, butter is also dairy. So like things like grilling a bun, like if it's a hot dog that we're getting and the bun usually has like butter or like some sort of like, it's been not charred, like heated
toasted
up on the grill. Yeah, toasted. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Like sometimes people don't connect, like butter is dairy.
I don't even connect that that's.
See?
And I used to have a dairy thing. That's wild.
So you have to, like, I definitely always remind them of that.
Do you ever just feel like it's not worth it? Because this is how I always feel. I'm just like, this isn't worth my time. Like, this is so much for me to, why don't I just, okay, now we go to the concert,
And we definitely do that sometimes. Like sometimes I will just feed my kids before and then we'll go like, say it's an event or like something with other families, like I'll just make sure they are fed. And that way I don't have to really worry about it as much, except for like, the contact situation or like touching other things, wiping down. But like in terms of actually eating the food, I don't have to worry about it if I've pre-fed them. But other times it's like, I don't know.
You don't want to cook one more time.
Well, that absolutely. No, I don't want to. I will, but I don't want to. But also it's like, sometimes when it just doesn't work out timing wise, like we're not home before we were going to that place. And like, yes, I could say no. And I do a lot of times when we go home, but also like, I want to live our life. Like I want to be able to say yes and go with my friends to the brewery, and even though it's going to be over a weird meal time, you know, and yes, I could also pack food. I've done that a lot. A lot of times I get that question, like, do restaurants care if you bring in your own food? Like if the parents want to go out to eat, but like you don't feel comfortable with the kids stuff, can you like pack their meal from home? I have done that many of times and nobody has ever told me anything.
I can't imagine somebody being like, oh, that 3-year-old, he needs to not be eating those goldfish.
Right. Yes.
Not for you.
Not for us. Yeah. No goldfish here.
Goldfish is like something I always have in my bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
It's funny too, because I mean, it's not funny. Funny is the wrong word, but like dairy allergy is so
limiting.
It's in everything, like with the butter and cream, and
there's so many places
even in
that it can go wrong.
Yes. Like things like a ranch seasoning packet, you know, like Italian seasoning packets sometimes have it on. So if people are taking like quick thing, like you're getting a grilled chicken, but they like their seasoning that they throw on happens to have like milk powder in it. I mean, that happens.
So many ways for it to go awry.
And for people to not understand, right? Like we understand as food allergy people that like we've got to check everything, even the freaking seasoning can.
Yep.
But like people that don't live and breathe allergies every day, like they're not thinking that. So that's why when I go to a restaurant, I am like over the top with telling them and double checking with them everything. Like things like, and just a reminder, you know, we can't have butter. Butter is dairy. So if you use butter on your buns, like please don't do that.
And it's not, I guess I get so caught up on like, and when you're saying like, and just so you know, we can't have butter, for somebody to be like, oh, they're trying to be healthy, or oh, they're being a lot, like, what's a little butter? Like, what's if it's, I touched that last bun and now I'm touching this bun. But I'm like, these people don't understand that touching one thing and then touching my food. Like I am so exhausted from explaining. So my version of that is like, so just a reminder, like if they have been making a charcuterie and then they touch my fries, it's gonna be a really serious medical issue. Like I am so exhausted from explaining the nuance and like trying to gauge whether they understand the nuance. And then the food comes and like doing body scans after I've, you know, for a certain amount of time after I've eaten it, I'm tired. Yeah. I think that's another reason why my eating habits have really changed so drastically is like in my 20s, it's sort of like going out and partying. Like I could put up with going to a music festival. Like I'd be tired at the end of the 3 days, but like, well, it's one day of feeling a little wrecked. Yep. Like I still go to work and my boss will be like, how was Stagecoach? Now, one day of ACL and I'm like, how much could I sell these online for?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
the hangovers last like 2 days.
Yes. I'm tired.
Right.
I have less of a tolerance for it because I've been doing it for so long. Mm-hmm. So
I think it does build. I mean, and after I have an experience like going out to dinner, it feels like I need a break. Like I can't do it many days in a row because just the mental load of it all and like having to do it all. I need a break.
And then the bill comes. And they're like, and now you have to pay $80 for that. And I'm like, I just paid to be stressed out for an hour and a half. That's 1/5 of a Reformation dress. Like what?
It is difficult to, but at the other end of that for me is that when it goes well, it's this feeling of like we did something, like this accomplishment moment for me too.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, it's exhausting, but it's also like encouraging because the more I do it, the more I feel confident, and not like false confidence, like I'm going to do too much and we're going to have a problem confidence, but just like okay, like I asked all the right questions. Okay, I made sure to like let them know how severe this was and they understood me and like I can do this again.
And it was good and my kid ate most of that and like maybe we're not going to do it again tomorrow, but maybe next week.
Right.
Yeah, no. And I just want to take a second I'm obviously in a state with, I'm on the other end of the spectrum with it, but I want to take a second to commend you for that and also point out to food allergy parents listening how important it is to be taking those sorts of calculated risks, or how important it is for food allergy kids to see the parents having those experiences that will build their confidence, because then they're not going to college and like, oh my gosh. Or like they're not stepping foot on going to the restaurant by themselves for the first time when they get their friend gets a license and now they can go off campus for high school lunch and being like, we didn't do this a lot. We did it only a little when I was growing up and my mom usually handled it. Like my mom never handled I always advocated for myself, and it made moving halfway across the country, eating in a cafeteria, living in a sorority house, going to restaurants, going to music festivals, going on dates. Like it just builds and builds and builds. And as much as when I look back on my childhood, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you were not even 10 years old and you were like the one to smell the fries in the cone and then to run over and ask the manager? And I'm like, thank God that I did.
Yeah.
Because it gave me, had so much confidence built over that many years of doing it for myself and for it being so normal. It wasn't a big deal for us to go on safari in Africa because I could handle it.
Yeah.
I could go and talk to the people, not in Swahili, we use the translator, but to explain like chickpea is actually related to the peanut. Like I can't just have the vegetarian option. Can I actually see what you guys are doing in that tent? Like, yeah. And it was always fine.
Yeah.
Like, so I think it is you're doing your kids such a service by doing like being uncomfortable and going through a bazillion steps just for them to have a chicken nugget from the fryer.
And I agree that like, yeah, that's not something you have to do constantly. Like don't kill yourself over it, but you do have to for their like quality of life and just, yeah, like confidence and feeling like they can handle it or like they can be living a normal full life. Like I feel like you do have to push yourself outside of your boundaries safely a little bit.
Totally.
And again, the more you do it, the more you're going to have confidence that like, I handled this. Yes. I took this calculated risk and it went well.
Yeah. I talk about this a lot with my therapist about like, she calls them safety behaviors, but like things that I'm doing out of trying to keep myself safe, but that are actually building. It's the opposite. It's actually building in my brain. Like I've done it so many times that like now that's like it's becoming a thing. For example, like where I prep my peanut doses, like there are little crumbs of peanut oil and peanut dust all over my kitchen counter where I prep it or where I dose every morning. And then even though I wipe it down and even though now I have, thanks to the Well 2 company, they were so kind to send me a lot of those Well 2 wipes, I'll wipe it down. Like I know that area has been decontaminated, but I don't want to sit there and have my lunch. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And I've built a safety behavior. Now I don't like using that side of the counter. So you're not ever standing really still. There's no such thing as standing still. And I think that with the pandemic things, like I always had this mentality of like, well, not right now. And that was fine. It probably wasn't a good idea right then.
Yeah.
But then I've continued that. And in my head, it's just like, I'll go back to that eventually. But it's just like anything in life. You're never really standing still. You're either building those thought patterns or building that confidence in this direction or in this direction. And I have been going in this direction. So I never, ever have had the thought, I can't handle this. Ever. Not when I went to college, not when I'm on a date, not now. Like even when I'm having a really hard time with food allergy anxiety, I always know I am safe with myself and I can handle this. And I think the way that food allergy parents handle their kids, especially when they're little or like when they're growing up, okay, now they're a little older. They're not sticking their hands in their mouth as much. Right. Now we're going to take this calculated risk and do this.
Yes.
So I just think that's so important. Like my inclination would be like, oh my gosh, like let me saran wrap you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look at your Instagram stories and your life and the way that you handle it with your boys. And I'm so impressed. And I already see them in their high school and college years, like just being able, no matter, how treatment all shakes out, or even if they weren't in treatment, like I just already can see, especially Graham, like being able to have such confidence in himself and handle himself.
I think so too. And I think you mentioned age and like when they're little versus as they're getting older. And I think that's a huge thing too. Like for anyone out there who's like my 2-year-old, my 3-year-old is like, I'm not feeling good about bringing them anywhere really, because they are
touching everything,
always touching everything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how my boys were too. And it just wasn't worth it. Like, not for like, take food allergies off the table, and it's still like not worth it to go to a restaurant because they're just all over the place. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Like those early years, like we would just have people over in our backyard, like friends. And like, yeah, it sucked when we had to sometimes, like, everyone's like, okay, we're going to go after X, Y, and Z. We're going to go to the pizza place. And we were like, okay, well, we'll catch y'all later. And like, that did suck. Like, not going to sugarcoat it, you know? Eventually got to the point, I think, where people didn't pick that place, you know? Like, we tried to find places that were safer, and then thankfully we had good friends that were like, yeah, let's go here instead, where it was safer. But even still, like, we just didn't do it very much, and that's okay. And I think, like, give yourself some time. Like, don't feel super stressed to like get a diagnosis of food allergy and be like, but we have to go try to take these calculated risks.
Yeah.
Like, no. You do not have to do that. But like, as they get older, I do think it's important. And I think it's important for you too, as the parent, like as a parent, as much as it is for your kid, I think it's important to like build those skills and figure out at least a couple of places that you can get like even one thing off the menu for your kid. Have that experience, build that confidence, and just have those be your go-to places until you feel a little good about going to try the next place.
This is like rolling it way back, but one of my other green flags that I just thought of is whenever I get a female waitress, girls, not to just lean into the stereotype, but like, we're really good at multitasking.
Yes.
And whenever I get a female waitress, who I typically don't ask for the manager because they're so on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, every time that I do have a handful of restaurants here in Austin that I am comfortable eating at. And yeah, every time I get a female waitress there, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or like, and when it's them to deliver my food and like reconfirm it, I'm like, I would let you, Jesus, take the wheel. Like, what's your name? Miranda, take the wheel. Like I feel so safe. Yeah. So
you can also see on menus and stuff online, sometimes they'll have like allergy statements. And I think that is another obviously green flag for me, is if they're like, you know, here are dairy, like if they, you know, the little markers that say like gluten-free or dairy-free or this has nuts. I'm like, okay, they're already like acknowledging it. So clearly they are aware. Now, if it's a place that has like a big, huge allergy statement that's like, we can never guarantee if you have severe allergies, you better not eat here. I'm like, yeah, thanks a lot for telling me that you're an a-hole. So we'll just avoid.
Exactly what I was just about to ask you is like, I'm going to challenge myself to take on some of your protocols and the things that make you feel safe, calling ahead and things like that. But I find myself, when I look at things on the menu ahead of time, it's like immediately is a no, because I can see like, oop, there's pistachios in this, and there's cashews in this, and there's peanut dressing in that. And oh my God, like I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this.
Well, I think that's okay though, Danielle. Like I would say that's fine. Don't go there.
Almost every menu is going to have nuts somewhere, you know? So like, one, I get overwhelmed when I look at menus online. Yeah. And two, like those big allergy statements, or like, and I'd rather somebody to tell me,
for sure,
we don't feel safe with you eating here. I have been told that many times, actually, in LA, pre me being like, oh, actually, I do need to be carrying an EpiPen. I would have people tell me like, you can't eat here. And I'd be like, yes, I can. It's fine. Like, there's nuts and everything. Like, I'm sure they're in the kitchen. I know they're in the kitchen. It's fine. I'll just get a fruit salad. Like, my friends like to tell this story where it was my first friend to get married out of college. And we were on a bachelorette party on Catalina Island. And it was one of those restaurants where it's instead of bread, you get a bowl of peanuts and you throw the shells on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
And like, we check in with the hostess, and the hostess is like, he was this like dear man. I think he was from like Greece or something. And he was like, you cannot eat here. There are peanuts everywhere. And so it became like the joke of the whole bachelorette trip of being like, everywhere. And we would say that after everything. So they sat us on the patio. They like wiped down the everything, sat us on the patio, and like wouldn't let me eat, but like packaged things. And at the time I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, eye roll. They've like pegged me as some sort of liability. And then cut to, I went back to that same place after I had my big accident and was seated inside, peanut shells everywhere. And I was with a boyfriend and I was like, I'm going back to the hotel. Like, I can't be here.
Yeah.
I can't be here.
Yeah.
So it's funny how like, it's always in flex. Like whether it's because your kids are little, whether it's because you've had a recent accident, whatever it is, like, I think that you have to have grace for yourself in that too.
Yeah.
It's like having a lifelong medical condition, like you're kind of always in flex.
Totally. Yeah. Something else you said about like wiping it down, I feel like that's something I didn't mention yet, is that like when we do go out to dinner, even if it's a place where I feel like, okay, we've taken the right kind of steps to be able to get to this place, you know, to sit down at this restaurant, I feel okay about it, but we still wipe things down. I always think about that rag, you know, like when they wipe a table down at a restaurant and it's like they grab the rag from like the bucket and you're like, but that rag, that bucket, and that like, is that a fresh bucket? And like, has that rag touched the other tables? Cause like what was on that table? And now you're smearing it around.
You're taking it straight out of my brain.
Yikes. And so I'm like, okay, I know that it's quote unquote clean, but like, I'm not sure it's quote unquote free of allergens. So I definitely like do my wipe down in the area where Graham is. Now, granted, like you could go down a rabbit hole and say like, but what about the silverware? Do you bring your own silverware? Cause that silverware at the restaurant, who knows if it has no, I don't. I think that again, you have to draw the line somewhere, and like, I believe that they have stuck that fork in the sanitized setting in their dishwasher and it's going to be okay. And like it is. And so if it's not, for one like crazy off chance scenario, like we have our emergency medicine and that is that. But like, I think that is extremely rare. And I do think with all things, we do have to consider like what is actual fact? Like what does research say about like tiny microparticles of a food protein on a fork that has been through a sanitized dishwasher? Like people are not dropping all the time. I mean, there are a lot of people with food allergies. I'm trying to say this in a way that's not like inflammatory, but like the death rate for food allergies is actually very low, very, very low. And any amount is too much. But like, this is not something where like all these people that live with food allergies are not all staying home 100% of the time. Totally. They are living and breathing and out in the wild, living their life and eating at restaurants. And they are generally not having reactions from a fork silverware that was given to them at that restaurant. And so I think I have to like remind myself of those things so that I can just, relax and like live a life.
What is reasonable. And like what is helpful. If the fork was just not in a napkin, like just, that it was plunked down straight on the table and there's a bunch of crumbs on the table.
Right. Or if there's an actual like residue.
Yes. If I see that the fork is not fully clean, then like, hey, can I get another setup?
For sure.
That's fine. But what is reasonable? You've done all that you can do.
Which I think goes back to the fact that like, don't rush into it. Take baby steps, with all of these things with allergies that's what I did. It's not like I was like, okay, I feel so overwhelmed, but I'm going to go to McDonald's and try to figure this out without calling. Like, no, like take a minute, get grounded, take like tiny baby steps that like go to, if you're a milk egg allergy only person, go to a vegan restaurant. Right. So like automatically there's no eggs or milk. Now, granted, there might be like cross contact with like, there might be nuts. But again, like find out something that you're okay with.
Right.
Take a baby step, do all of the things we said, call ahead, look at the menu, ask the open-ended questions, have them tell you their response, get a gut feeling for it. Like do all of these things one time, take a breath, try to do it again, and like just inch forward so that you can slowly but surely make these like reasonable, calculated risks that open your world up just a little bit, because it can be done.
Yes, I 100% agree. Also, I am queen of, as somebody who makes allergy content, I refuse to consume allergy content. I just won't. You're literally the only person that I will watch. It's too stressful for me. I already have too much load, obviously. So it's funny that this is one of the things I'm advising, but because I am the anti-fan of allergy Facebook groups and whatever.
Yeah.
But that is how I found Dr. Silvers at Aspire. And that also is how, it like led me to finding you, led me to loving almond butter,
right?
All these things. But I feel like there are groups on Facebook per city where moms will say like, we manage tree nut. This restaurant, at least for their spring menu, has no tree nuts. Manager's name is John.
Yes.
He has a food allergy as well. Like 5 stars. Go see him.
There's also the Spoken app.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And so I think that's not something I'll admit that I use all that regularly. I should leave my reviews. I'm going to like make a mental note to do that. But it's an app that people leave reviews specifically about their experience dining there with allergies, based on what allergies they manage. And it's a really good resource to like, if you're going to a new city or even in your own, like pull that up and see if there's anywhere that people have reviewed many times with your same allergies that have said like, the staff is fantastic. Yes. Because that is a wonderful resource that could be really helpful at making even just your anxiety reduced.
I've been chatting with the founder of Spoken, and so following she and her family's life has been really fun. And recently they were on a vacation, I believe in Mexico, and she was talking about all of the places that her food allergy child manages peanuts and tree nuts, just like me. And it was so cool to see all of the restaurants that they were eating at and how the resort that they went to. And she described their family as a try everything family, like everything on the table. You can take a bite of your dad's, you can take a bite of your sister's. Like, that's never, I have my plate and nobody touches it and I don't touch anybody's plate. But it was so cool to see that. And I'm going to Cabo for one of my best friend's 30th birthday. She's throwing herself like a bachelorette.
Amazing.
It's her 30th birthday.
Hell yeah.
And it was so cool. I mean, it's totally different area and totally different restaurants we'll be in, but just seeing her family do it and eat out, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you totally can see so many people's experiences on the Spoken app. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then definitely if you're in the Austin area, I do have a little highlight on my Instagram that shows some places that like we have eaten safely.
Okay, give me five of them, or like 3 to 5.
Our go-tos: Honest Mary's. It's like a fast casual, kind of like Chipotle, but really healthy and like
sweet green vibes.
Yes. So that is great. They have not a lot of milk. I think the only like dairy that they have is goat cheese, like goat cheese. Yeah. I'm like, is that a thing? Hold on. I'm mixing up all my like tip foods, like sheep yogurt. I'm like, what is it called? Okay. Honest Mary's is fantastic. Cava is also great. And that's in a lot of different cities, but they have it here. Now I will say my boys don't particularly like all of the flavors and like the mixed bowl type things, but like they have been really good when we, as in my husband and I, wanted to eat according to their allergies. Like they have all sorts of protocols. Plus they don't just have a ton of like nuts and things on their menu.
Both of those are like amazing to hear you say that, because those are the types of places where it's like you walk in and it's just like a bunch of things in a bunch of little containers all next to each other, which I typically don't even, I just keep walking. Yeah. So it's cool to hear that like fast, casual can walk in and they still have amazing protocols.
The thing with those two restaurants in particular, they just don't have a lot of the ingredients that like my children are allergic to like on the menu. And then also they are very willing and have protocols where they can go get food from the back. So like off of the line. So those are two kind of things that I think I keep in mind. Cause like Chipotle, yes, they've been known to be super allergy friendly, but like, and they will get, I think, things from the back, but so many times I've been there and there's just like a cheese drop, you know, like a shred of cheese is dropped into the guacamole. And I'm like, no, like, but I've never had that experience at either of like the Cava or the Honest Mary's place. So those are two places we've been to. Also, oh my gosh, why is my brain not working? The place you and I went. Oh my gosh, in the Domain. True Food Kitchen.
Oh yeah, they're also nationwide.
Yes. And so, like they're kind of a chain in different places. So True Food is great with allergies. We have actually in Austin been to like Phil's Ice House and Waterloo Ice House, which again, these are places that like are more kid friendly. They have playgrounds and such, but they have been really good about taking our allergies seriously and also like giving us like one of them actually I emailed and were able to like send us ingredient lists, like back, like pictures of the hot dog bun, like back in an email.
Wow.
So they've been really great about that.
Honestly,
as well.
Sarah, and I feel like this is always popping into my head about just our whole friendship in general, but like hearing this episode has been really healing for me. Like my automatic now is just to be like, nope, they're not gonna be able to, nope, too dangerous. Nope. Too much of a bother. Nope. And just hearing you just talk about those 3 places, I'm like, hello?
Yeah. It could totally.
It's really encouraging.
It could totally be done. And now that said, like, I'm trying to like rack my brain for another one. Like Hawaiian Bros is like they just don't have nuts on their menu, you know? And it's like,
what is Hawaiian Bros?
Like, it's like, mainly like meat, like, pulled pork or like,
and the sauces?
Spicy chicken. Yeah. And like rice and vegetables. And no, it's just like really simple
I think
food.
you need to give me like assignments every week. Like,
I do.
Okay, this week you're going to Hawaiian Bros.
For sure.
It'll be like a scavenger hunt.
And it's delicious, and the boys actually like it too. Chick-fil-A, I mean, it's everywhere, but like it is a good one for us.
My nemesis.
So, but the grilled chicken and the French fries are in the canola oil, not the peanut oil, and also their peanut oil. Again, you have to do it based on what your allergist says, but they specifically get American 100% refined peanut oil that is stripped of all of the peanut protein. So again, some people might be highly, highly, highly sensitive and like talk to your allergist, but most allergists will even tell you that like Chick-fil-A peanut oil is safe for peanut allergies.
I know that my doctor does food challenges for Chick-fil-A specifically.
Yeah.
I hate Chick-fil-A. That's one of the first reactions I ever had.
Oh my gosh.
Was at the mall. I was like
peanut
6 years
oil?
old. I was 6 years old, so who knows? Who knows what oils they used back then?
Yeah.
And also, it was from French fries, so they definitely
changed it.
Yeah, you cannot base today's versus
totally
what happened
every
in
label
1997.
every time.
Yes, 1997 for me. But yeah, I remember like my mouth really hurting and my throat burning, and telling my mom like something is not right. Yeah, just like even seeing, oh my God, seeing a Chick-fil-A. I had to get my car serviced recently, and the guy who like took my keys and like drove it off to get serviced, I like looked in his little area and he had been eating Chick-fil-A. And
you're like, oh,
and I was like, I was already going to get a new car, but just take it away. I'll buy a new one.
Burn it. Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, and totally like you're going to have places like that are like blocks for you. Like you're not going to be able to do that. For us, it's been awesome to be able to have like the indoor slide that they can go play on. And
I love that.
It's good. I'm trying to think if there's any. There are more, and I just can't think of them right now, but I could list them out maybe in the show notes if that's helpful, and go to my Instagram.
Off the top of my head, Austin, I was going to say True Foods. That's one that like consistently I will go to. They have amazing allergy protocol. The last time I was there, the guy could tell I was like obviously really freaked out and like kept checking. And so he was like, I just want to let you know, like I am 110% sure you're going to be safe. Like there is no peanut or tree nut contact whatsoever. And the like chef came out, the one who prepared it, which had never happened before, came out and set it down. He was like, I also am 110% sure. And I was like, thank you. It made all the difference. So yeah, True Foods. And that was one of the places that I would go a lot in LA. Yeah. A lot. Austin specific Perla's is amazing. Like they are so well versed in allergies and I have always felt safe eating things and like even trying different things off the menu, not just ordering the same thing every time. Let's see.
It's also so important to just recognize that like what allergens you're managing, right?
Of course.
Because like, again, you just I'm not saying just as in a, like, it's not that big of a deal.
Tree nut, not dairy egg.
Yes. And so it's like, you do have to keep that in mind, because somewhere that would be like super awesome and safe for you would be like horrible for my family.
Totally. I totally agree. But like just from the staff is aware and so helpful and so delightful.
Right.
I don't know how they're going to be with dairy and egg, but I would guarantee they would be so kind and so communicative.
Yes.
And like there have been times where they're like, oh, our pastry chef was here and was putting things in the fryer that may have had nuts, so no fries this time. And I'm like, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, Fressa's in Austin is amazing for me.
Love that
They're
place.
very, very well versed. The manager like knows everything.
Oh, that's good to know, because I feel like Fressa's, they do a lot of chicken. So
a lot of chicken.
I feel like that's a place we could like get away with finding something for the boys.
I think
Never
so.
tried it, but that's good to know.
They're really good with like, and there is a seasonal thing that has this. So, and it touches that, like, don't do that. So that has been really helpful. In LA, my favorite and my go-to is Sugarfish. I'm obsessed with Sugarfish. It's Japanese. So like Japanese is a restaurant where I typically feel very safe. There's not a lot of nuts in Japanese cuisine.
Yeah.
Like sushi, unless it's like some scary fusion. Just like nigiri, straight nigiri is a 10 out of 10 for me. In-N-Out is the only drive-through where it's such a surreal experience every time I go to, and it was like it was a fave in LA too, way before I had food allergy anxiety. Like I was always obsessed with In-N-Out, so at least it's not been taken away from me.
Yes.
But it's the one place where I don't say a thing other than I want this, that, and the other. Here's my card, the end. I can drive away and not wonder about anything. And it's so weird to be like, wait, I didn't tell them. It's like, you didn't have to.
You didn't have to?
Yeah.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah. And Salt and Straw, that's in a lot of different cities. It's an ice cream shop that definitely would not be good for dairy. But if you're looking for an ice cream shop experience and you don't have a dairy allergy, they're really good about going to the back. And they have such amazing protocols. Yeah, there's so many. We should like put a little list together for the show notes.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Cool. Let's jump into question answer.
Let's do it.
Cool. This segment is brought to you by Inchbug. It's a personalized waterproof label company for kids.
And the owner is actually an allergy mom herself. She is lovely. I use these labels on my kids' lunch boxes and water bottles, and man, do they stay put, even going through the dishwasher, hand washing, whatever, they're not going anywhere.
Love it. Find out more about Inchbug in the show notes, and we also have a little discount for you guys. It's EpiPod 25. Cool. Okay, our first question. Any advice for family that does not believe in the severity of your child's allergy or take it seriously? I feel like food allergy people have all run across that sometime or another, whether it's family or not, but when it's family, it's extra hurtful.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, in my case, I have had 99% of family members take it seriously. I would say more so than not taking it seriously, some people have just not understood it per se. Like, it's not that they're being mean, it's that they really don't understand the severity. So it takes like some extra explaining. And I think for me, I had to mentally like accept that like, and tell myself like, this is not them being rude. This is them not getting it, and they're just going to take a little extra like nudging and communication, which yes can be like frustrating, because for you're like, but this is my kid's life, like come on dude. But they grew up in a different time, or they just like have it in their mind that for some reason it's like a weak thing to have a food allergy, or you know, like something like that. Like they have some sort of block where they just don't want to like accept it.
Honestly, the media has treated it like such a joke for so long that it's like kind of subconsciously ingrained in them.
Totally.
Like, oh, your lips blew up big, not
right. Yes.
Your life is on the line.
So I think for me, I try to think that everybody has good intentions. Maybe some just are not as aware and like understanding as they should be when you explain it the first time. So I would say take a couple more opportunities to like really explain to that person the severity, meaning like you tell them, you know, about cross contact, you tell them how of a past experience, whether it be your own or somebody else's, like, hey, I have a friend, use me, you know, like my friend's kid just breathed in pancake batter that had milk proteins in it, didn't even eat it, and had a anaphylactic reaction. That's how serious it can be. Or use your own experience. Like they were at the playground and their hand touched, you know, something that had ice cream on it, and they had hives all over their arm. I mean, just like, don't be afraid to like really explain to them in detail, like why this is so serious. Show them the EpiPen. Like it might feel like you're quote unquote being dramatic, but like if that's what it takes for them to understand it, then do it. The other thing I would say is that if you are trying a couple of times and it's not working, like they're not understanding it, you have to draw a boundary, and that's okay too. I mean, like, if they're not going to be somebody that you feel good about, obviously never leave your kid with them. That's number one. And then like also maybe limit your time in general at that person's house or like in their presence. I mean, it's okay to draw the line, as tough as it is. I mean, that's easier said than done, depending on a lot of situations. But yeah, I mean, I've had a family member say some really questionable things, and it's like,
how did you handle that? Like, how do you?
I got really upset internally. I mean, I think I'm somebody who can like hold it together in terms of like not blowing up in someone's face. But I think I like took a deep breath and I was like, oh, that's actually not very funny. Like it's a really serious thing. My kid could have to go to the hospital or have a life-threatening reaction. So like, I think let's just change the subject. Or I said something like that. And then like 5 minutes later, thought of an excuse to like leave
skedaddle
or walk away and just like have a moment of frustration later. And then again, like draw a line where like, I'm not going to be around this person when we're eating, or we're not going to go to this person's house for Thanksgiving or whatever it might be. Or like, we're not even going to bring up allergies in conversation anymore because like I've already tried it and it's not getting across, you know? So I would just say like, give them the benefit of the doubt. Try a couple of times in a couple different ways to explain how important and severe the allergy is. And if they're still not getting it, then you have to draw a personal boundary and stick to it, because not only for your child's safety or for your own safety, but for your sanity.
I think once you've like sat somebody down and explained it to them, they're either going to choose one of the two paths. They're either going to have empathy and join your kickball team and getting behind keeping this kid safe and in supporting you and all of the stuff that the food allergy life throws at you, or they're going to continue making it a joke and you have to draw the boundary that feels best for you and who that family member is. I would say like because as a 90s allergy kid, as somebody who used to not even know to check every label every time, as somebody who never had epinephrine until something terrible happened, like my own family and closest friends, I get the feedback a lot of like, but you never used to be like this. Yeah. And I'm like, I just didn't know any better. And I think, I don't know. So like last 4th of July, I went to my half sister's house and like brought all my own food. And she was like, this is like, do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable. But like, you used to always eat from when we would grill out or used to whatever. And she had a lot of questions. All of them were very kind and very empathetic, but a lot of questions. And then after listening to the podcast, like the conversations that we've had, I feel so supported and thankful for her. Or like when I have a food challenge, like just seeing the path, like giving, I guess, yourself the option that like once somebody does know, like they may be your biggest supporter. She certainly has become. Like when I was doing my food challenges, like texting me after each dose or listening to every podcast. And so not that she never, hit the mic. She never was insensitive about it. She just had a lot of questions of like, you used to not do this, like explain it to me. Yeah. And now like she is a safe person to me. So I guess you could show them some resources like a podcast or like, I guess
give them time.
Give them time and also know that like somebody who may not understand now, again, she always was so kind about it. And this sounds like the person writing in, they're not being kind about it, but like, just know that somebody who may not fully understand where you're coming from now might become one of your safest people.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. Question number 2. How can we be more aware in public settings or workspaces for those who have allergies? So I guess this is coming from the perspective of like, this person does not have allergies, but they want to be like a good Samaritan, a good steward to people who do.
That is so kind. First of all, whoever wrote that in, my whole heart.
Yes. Thank you. That's amazing.
I actually recently saw a TikTok about this where like a girl was vlogging her work day and she bit into a peanut butter sandwich that she had packed herself. And then immediately she like looks at the camera because you can see somebody walking behind her. And she writes on the screen, like, when you realize, I guess they're on like a work from home schedule, like people aren't in the office all the time every day anymore. So like when you realize that you're eating a peanut butter sandwich and the coworker who has a life-threatening peanut allergy is in the office today.
Or shares your desk, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't it
like,
something like that?
She looked like she was like in a cubicle or something.
Yeah.
And so she like puts it back in and like immediately washes her hands, gets a Clorox wipe, and not just wipes down like her area, but she like goes back and wipes down everything that she touched, which I was like, you are the dream coworker, roommate.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
So like, it's so encouraging when you see it not being made a joke, but you see people out in the wild actually caring, like the person who wrote in.
Yes. I think one thing I would add is that like, just understand, like learning a little bit more about allergies would be helpful. Like, so however that looks for you, like Googling or following an allergy page, listening to a podcast, like if you love somebody who has a food allergy or who has children who have food allergies, like just become a little bit more educated on your own or ask questions to like learn a little bit more about how it works. I think that would be great. And then also like simple things, like just not eating on a playground, for example. Like, so even my own sister would be like, she said before Graham, she never thought like to have her kid eat at the picnic table instead of the playground. Like if her kid came up to her, if my nephew was like, I want a snack, but like he was
running
still
around.
playing.
Yeah.
Like she would be like, okay, here's your Chalmex, and like never ever thought. But like now she knows that like, no, we can't do that. Like there could be, then you might be dropping peanuts on the playground and that could be really dangerous for someone like my nephew, And so things like that, like just not eating in like super public places or like only eat in designated food areas and wiping your hands after or wiping your children's hands after, like that can go a really long way in somebody's both safety and like mental health in terms of like not feeling anxious with their own children in a public setting.
I think from the adult perspective, when I really feel loved and like so many of my friends just they are so great about my allergy and something that they do that I've never asked them to do. I can just tell like, wow, they really are looking out for me, but not making me feel like othered or like that it's a special thing. They'll throw out like, okay, like wine night at my house, or like, sometimes it's not just like a close group of friends. It's like a big event. And they're like, it's a 50-person birthday party. And they're like, hey, like come over to my house, like RSVP this number. We're doing a cookout. Also, please let me know if there are any food allergies.
Yes.
They don't have a food allergy.
No.
They're just asking because they're about to host a lot of people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wonder, they know my allergies, but I wonder how many other people that's going to affect,
right.
Especially if there's going to be kids at the party where like, it's not just nuts.
And also not only affect the people that have allergies, but like you putting that on an invitation that goes out to 30 people and maybe you, Danielle, are the only one that actually needed that little disclaimer, like to tell them about your allergies. But guess what? The other 29 people now read something about like, hey, we got to look out for if anybody has allergies. So maybe on their next invitation, they're going to put that on theirs too.
Totally.
Like, so by doing stuff like that, like I see it on birthday party invitations. I put it on mine for like, Graham's party. Like I say, let me know if you have allergies. We're like open to making sure the party is safe and inclusive to everyone. But like, again, I agree. Like putting that on any sort of invitation or gathering, that like memo out there is a huge help for people with allergies and also just spreading awareness.
Yeah. Something else that I've seen that has been really helpful for me is I get anxious when I go to like pre-games is what we used to call them. I don't know what we call them anymore. It's just like
get-togethers before going out or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't called it a pregame since I was literally in college, but like we'll go over to someone's house and like it's very potluck style. So everybody's bringing everything and I'm just like, ooh, like I don't know if those cookies are peanut butter, and then I'll smell it on someone's breath or something and it'll like jolt of anxiety. But like if the tin foil is labeled and it's like pizza popovers, like like milk or something on it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen milk on it. It's when it's been like cookies, and they're like walnut chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
But yeah, there have been like several instances where like someone does not know me. They don't know that I'm going to the party, and I see it just out in the wild, and I'm so appreciative.
Yep.
Like somebody at my book club wanted to, they were like, I was doing cookie experiments this weekend. I have so many cookies. I have to get them out of the house. Does anybody have any food allergies at book club? And I'll bring them if they don't conflict. And I was like, thank you.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
That is so kind.
And I think about similarly at like a church, after church something. I think it was like Christmas Eve service, and they had maybe it was Easter, and they had a like gathering in the auditorium, and like people brought like cookies and different things, and there were no signs or anything. And I remember talking with somebody afterwards and saying like, oh, did you go down and grab something? And I kind of just briefly said like, oh yeah, well, my kids have food allergies. Nothing was really labeled. And they thought to themselves, gosh, yeah, we should have people label ingredients. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I mean, and I didn't say like, yes, you should, blah, blah, blah. Like,
it's just like,
it was just like, okay, like maybe they'll do that next time. And then maybe that will help some people. You know, it still might help not help some people who are super sensitive to cross contact or like really worried, but there are some people who just like can't have it but aren't super worried about that, like of the cross contact kind of risk, and like for them then they would be included, you know. So just having again more awareness out there, like labels and things like that, I think would be very, very helpful if you're hosting something or you're in charge of something at a group thing like a church. That would be ideal.
In the workplace, like I remember when I had a 9 to 5, when anybody would bring anything into the office, my best friend also worked at the same company, and she would be like, she had an avocado allergy, which is so random. We were like, we can't go anywhere because I eat a ton of avocado and she eats a ton of peanuts. But like she would put in the Slack channel, like, hey, I'm bringing muffins, like they have egg and dairy, FYI, if anybody's trying to stay away from that. Like, I guess the intense languaging, however you want to do it is perfectly fine. But I don't like the really intense languaging makes it feel like so intense. I really appreciate it when people are just like, let me know, like there's dairy in it, just so you know. No, I wouldn't eat it if I had if I was severely allergic to dairy.
Right.
Or like like you were saying.
I think that the only other thing I would say is like thinking to like my work functions and stuff, people who aren't aware are like putting spoons and like, so if it's like a serving thing and like you're just like dipping one spoon in here and then like, oh, this doesn't have a spoon, let me grab that one and put it in here. Like just not doing things like that too would really help people who have any kind of like even sensitivity, in a work setting. So I hope that was helpful.
Thanks for listening to EpiPod. Thanks to Inchbug. Follow us on social. Our handles are in the summary, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
See you next week.